This video is over the Constructivist Learning Theory by Melissa Griswold for my Theory Resource Assignment for IDT 7074 for Dr. Trey Martindale. Constructivism is the theory that we generate knowledge as we experience situations and interpret them. We are actively seeking and making meaning from all of our life experiences. Since knowledge is constructed on an individual's reality and experience, it might not accurately represent reality. Knowledge that is constructed can be altered if new information conflicts or expands on previous information. Knowledge should be tested and verified against the knowledge and reasoning of others, such as parents, teachers, and peers. Learning should be done through context and should be both meaningful and applicable to the real world. Knowledge is not transferred until it is applied. In order to help this, constructivists believe that making lessons personal to students' interests will help them reach a deeper level of understanding because they are motivated and see the learning as purposeful. Typical constructivist goals include solving complex problems, acquiring content knowledge through complex domains, critical thinking, collaboration, reasoning, reflection, and developing personal inquiry skills. Cooperative learning can help students understand both basic views and multiple representations when solving problems to help promote independence and personal accountability. Cooperative learning, critical thinking, and higher-order thinking skills are all meant to help students become masters of their own learning. Problem-based learning is an example of constructivism in the classroom. It was initially developed in the 1970s for medical education. Similar to other collaborative methods, students work in groups to solve a real problem by using a variety of resources to derive possible solutions. When generating the problems must raise the concepts and principles relative to the content domain and also be real. The goal is to simulate a real-world environment that students might encounter in order to best transfer and apply their knowledge. Another form of constructivist theory applied to the classroom is inquiry-based learning. Teachers can make learning meaningful when they employ activities that call on students to use their prior knowledge and experiences to construct their own frames of thought. Inquiry approaches require students to use critical thinking skills and to discuss concepts in a non-threatening way. One example of an inquiry-based model uses 3 phases: exploration, discussion and presentation of new content, and application and expansion. The teacher uses guided questioning and lecture to help students form their understanding and clarify any questions that they might have. Inquiry-based learning lessons are difficult to plan, but they are very effective. They can give teachers a way to personalize and contextualize information in such a manner that students can relate it to their own lives. Fincham says that the constructivist theory, as we understand it in here, is as old as our traditions. Plato learned by following Socrates. Socrates taught through insightful questioning that helped form one's own knowledge. He taught a slave boy who had no education the Pythagorean theorem only by the use of questioning. Today, our thoughts on constructivists were originally formed by Piaget. There are several different views on constructivism. 2 of the most popular views are individual and social constructivism. The difference between individual and social constructivism is that the social constructivists place emphasis on the social community. Lewis states that the personal constructivism argues that the universe is no longer a mind-independent existence, and all individuals cannot be expected to have given or uniform cognition. Social constructivism proposes that the cross-community transfer of learning cannot and should not be counted on. Individual constructivism is derived from Piaget's work. He states that knowledge is invented and reinvented as the child develops and interacts with the world surrounding her. Individual constructivist theorists believe that knowledge is constructed more on a personal level from an individual's interactions and own thoughts. Knowledge cannot be transmitted from person to person, but is constructed by the individual. They promote learner-centered and discovery-oriented learning styles. A learner's social environment and interactions are only seen as stimulus for the cognitive development. Social constructivism was derived from the work of Lev Vygotsy. Vygotsy agreed with Piaget's thoughts that knowledge is internalized through one's interactions with the world, but he also gave credit to both social interaction and culture as well. Vygotsy disagreed with the behaviorist approach, calling it too narrow and isolated. Learners construct knowledge through their learning environment, which includes their interactions in society. Jean Piaget was a Swiss psychologist that lived from August 9, 1896, until he died September 16, 1980, at 84 years old. He is known for genetic epistemology, theory of cognitive development, object permanence, egocentrism, and constructivism. He was always trying to answer the question, how does knowledge grow and develop? According to Piaget, the nature of knowledge should be studied empirically where it is actually constructed and developed. Piaget studied the development of children to study how knowledge grows and logic thinking is developed. Through this, he developed the stages of cognitive development, stating that there are 4 stages: sensory motor, pre-operational, concrete operational, and formal operational. It was through this development that he formed his own constructive epistemology, known as individualist constructivism. His theories on constructivism were actually not popularized until the 1960s. Lev Vygotsy was a Russian psychologist that lived from November 19, 1896, until he died June 11, 1934, at the age of only 37 years old. He is known for creating the zone of proximal development and for a branch of constructivism known as social constructivism. Vygotsy created the zone of proximal development to explain how a child learns to complete a goal. The zone of proximal development states that a child will first be unable to complete a goal and then it will be out of his reach. After he has assistance from a teacher or mentor providing scaffolding, he will then be able to complete the goal with help. Furthermore, after this assistance, he will then be able to move on to being actually complete the goal independently and working unassisted. While Vygotsy shared some of Piaget's views, he was more interested in how our intellectual development changed and evolved from birth until death, and he placed more emphasis on the social aspect of learning. It is because of this interest in social aspect of learning, Vygotsy is credited with social constructivism. Behaviorism is the belief that learning happens from repetitive frequency of an observable performance. Learning is caused by a stimulus. Behaviorism is concerned with the association between the stimulus and the response that is made, strengthened, and maintained. The learner plays a passive role in the learning environment. This is drastically different to a constructive belief that learners construct knowledge from their environment and that they should be actively involved in the learning process. Behaviorists use instructional clues, reinforcement, and practice to help ensure learning that is effective when recalling facts and making generalizations, associations, and connections between concepts. It does not effectively address higher-order thinking skills, which is a strong component of the constructivist view. Cognitism was developed in the 1950s as learning theorists shifted away from behavior models to a design that depended on cognitive thinking. Ertmer states that psychologists and educators began to de-emphasize a concern with overt, observable behavior and stressed instead more complex cognitive processes such as thinking, problem-solving, language, concept formation, and information processing. Now, the emphasis is placed on the mental process. They are more concerned with what they know and how knowledge is acquired. Transfer is viewed as how it is stored in the memory. This is contrary to constructivism, which views transfer as actually applying new knowledge to a different scenario.